I started getting into software, into programming in high school, but then I really didn't pursue it like professionally until I was like 20 in my like 2027 or something. So I studied program like I shifted careers, right? At this point I was still like doing um I guess customer service, and I decided I wanted to shift into programming because I wanted to build my own software and all that, my own products. And then so so I decided, okay, I will stop working and devote like 6 months to just learn programming. And so that's what I did. And after 6 months, I got a job doing web development with Ruby. Um, it's a general programming language, and using this framework called Ruby on Rails. And from there, I shifted to um, a different language called Elixir. I used that for several years, and then I shifted to this language called Golang. And then that's the last like back end language I used for work. And so yeah, and then before I decided to shift into DeFi and learn Solidity and all that. So yeah.
It's amazing that you start quite late with development, isn't it? Because you just did so well with it. Why did you did this before?
Um, I actually don't know. Like, I just realized later on, like, it's something that that was interesting to me. I was always into computers. I was the guy in my family, at least, like that handled all the um, technical stuff. So if they had problems with computers, it was always I was the go-to guy. So, and of course, video games and all that. I I'm not entirely sure why it was so late. Like when I was in college, like I took a different, I took psychology and all that. So yeah,
Well, that helps a
I
lot.
wish. Sorry, psychology helps a lot.
Yeah, with auditing, right? You kind of understand how developers think and what is your, their mental state of that point in the code.
Yeah, yeah, I guess it does help. I mean, there was this one in Ethos Reserve, this audit contest, Ethos Reserve, and I was thinking I'd focus on this part of the code where the devs were saying that this part is like more modern Solidity code, and they thought that that was more secure, but it was still in scope. So I thought, okay, since the devs said that this is largely secure, maybe most would ignore this. So and yeah, I found an issue there, but the issue was not really in the was more in the integration between this newer part of the code with the older part of the code, if that makes sense. But
Yeah,
yeah.
those totally. Can we talk a little bit about what is the experience of being an independent auditor or doing private audits? Because I know that that's something that a lot of people are looking up to, and it's not that easy today, is it?
Yeah, doing private audits. It's not that easy today. You mean like securing, getting private audits? Is that what you mean?
Making a lot of money with it without having the right brand, without having building a name, without having the connections to the protocols.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Actually, being when I started getting into auditing, I thought I could rely solely on income from what do you call this from Code Arena or from no from audit contests, separate from private audits. Because like I thought, if you were top 5%, top 1%, I don't know, maybe you'd make enough. But now that I'm doing it, although I'm not consistently top one, I mean, if you're consistently top one, for sure you're gonna be making a decent amount. But if you're like top five to the top 10 or something, Like I just checked like the last 90-day leaderboard, if I'm not mistaken, like I checked last week. From top 5 to top 10, it's like you make 12K over 3 months. So that's not really like something you could rely on, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So like you could choose to be a DeFi dev instead and make 100 to 200K a year, and that's a lot more than what you make in Code Arena. For private audits, yeah, of course, you can't just jump in and like expect to get private audits. You have to, in my opinion, you have to like at least make a name for yourself, right? Show that you're capable, prove that you could actually, um, do that you're a skilled auditor. And I think the best way to do that is through platforms like Code Arena, Unify, Sherlock. Yeah.
But how did you woke up for crypto security? Because one thing is starting to do in Solidity, so usually that comes with, I invested in some shitcoin, or I love blockchain, I love cryptography. What brought you to Solidity itself? Was investing in something, or you just got curious about the technology?
Oh yeah. Reading up about different blockchains, like Phantom and all those different stuff, and I'd read their white papers, and so yeah, I was like investing, trading, and I also ended up working like my last Web2 job was actually a job with this company that is like that is within the crypto space. Like we would index data from different blockchains. Um, so so yeah, I was interested because I thought I'd like to make my own DeFi product eventually, and yeah, so I thought I'd learn Solidity, I'd learn DeFi, I'd dive into it, maybe build a product someday. But then I shifted course to auditing like 5 months ago. So yeah.
And can we talk a little bit about how to do well on Code for Arena? Because I think you did pretty great. You went from five months to working with Trust. So this is not for everybody. What is the secret,
Yeah.
bro?
Um, yeah, well, that's the thing. Actually, I'm not that sure, but I feel like um, what really helped. Well, first of all, before I got into auditing, I was already like studying DeFi, studying Solidity, and I had some background, so that that did help. But I feel that like what helped also was um, of course you have to work on your process. Like the first audit I did was actually this reserve protocol, and I didn't do well in that audit. Like I did not submit any findings, and the main thing I changed from that audit to the next audit, which was the popcorn audit, where I did well. Like I got top two at that audit. Um, was mainly not to be too. In my first audit, I tried to dive deep right away. Like when I tried to understand the code on my first read through instead of like trying to do multiple passes, right? So I wasn't that methodical in my first audit. In my second one, I tried to be more like methodical. I tried to keep in mind that, okay, I'm not going to understand this code base in just one pass. It's going to take multiple passes. The first ones should be just like quick, help me give an idea about the code, the structure of the code base, help me gain context before I actually dive deeper into the code. So yeah, I think that's one of the main differences that I did, and I think I was able to do well also because I tried to focus on uniques. Although some might say that like there's no way to do that, right? How can you ensure that you find uniques? I mean, you could maybe just increase the likelihood. or yeah, and you'll know if something is more unique. It doesn't need to be like a solo finding, right? It could be a finding that's more rare, and those are better rewarded in Code Arena.
When you say
So
unique, you're relating it to creativity. So being really creative when coming up with the exploit process and trying to go over non-obvious processes, or you're talking about having a strategy of I know these vectors exists in these types of protocols. So if the DEX, let's look into the Oracle pricing. If it's flash loans, let's look at how the process is being repaid, or is really like being creative when approaching a problem.
yeah, more like being creative and thinking about. Um, I'm not entirely sure how to say this, but basically try to think differently from others. Although that's very easy to say, but like maybe for like I mentioned earlier, right, in that ethos reserve contest, I was able to find a solo medium by focusing on that part of the code that the dev team was saying, "Oh, don't bother looking. This code is more secure." So I focused more on that,
That's amazing.
thinking that others might, listen. Most would listen to the devs, and I found a solo medium there, but it was more of the integration with the code the integration with that newer code and the older code. So yeah,
Can we talk a little
something
bit
like that.
about how to build a brand on Twitter? Because you also did that really well. What was your strategy? Or just posting your findings, making posts about security things, or some tips and tricks?
Yeah, well, I've been doing. Uh, I've been testing out different types of content, right? I just tweet, and I try to stick to a regular schedule. Although lately I haven't been really doing that because I felt like I needed to focus more on audits. But yeah, so what helped was being consistent, right? Doing at least 1 to 2 tweets a day. You don't flood people's uh, timeline with too many tweets. I think 1 to 2, maybe 4 at most. Um, and the type of content I share are usually like insights that I come up with about auditing. Like people love like anything that could help in their audits. Um, Also, people generally like when you share achievements. There was this one day I gained like 100 plus 200 followers and that was when I shared my first like Code Arena payout, which was the popcorn contest where I got number two. So like in one day, I think I gained like 100 to 200 followers, and the following days, like there's like 50 every other for the next 2 3 days or something. So yeah.
You talk so naturally about becoming number one, number two in this contest, and this is so fucking hard. How did you
Yeah.
how did you beat yourself? Because like for me, what makes auditing extremely hard is myself. I'm over the code and I'm reading that 15 line function for 20 hours now. How do I convince myself that the thing is good enough?
Um. Yeah. When you're stuck in this and at a certain code, at a certain line of code, like what I do is I just skip it, and then read everything else surrounding it, and eventually I think it will start making sense. So it's normal, right? Like we'll always like I think even the best auditors out there, like Trust and Zach Bront and how do you pronounce his name? I'm not sure. Hola,
Hola, just call Hola.
uh, Holla, yeah, yeah, Holla. I mean, I'm sure they have um difficulty still, right? Especially at first because like it's new code. So yeah. Like for me, if I get stuck, I unstuck. I get myself unstuck by just pushing through and reading different parts of the code, and that will give me context. And when I get back to it, that's when I, you know,
Awesome. Can we talk a
yeah.
little bit about the automated part of the auditing you do? So are you today using, some special glitter printers? Today are you using some fuzzing? What is your testing setup?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm mostly manual at the moment. Although I was thinking I'd like to add like some automated stuff, like use Slither more and their printers. But at the moment, I just like doing it manually. And the only automated thing I do is like the automated testing. Like I like playing with the Foundry tests or hard hat tests or any tests that come with the project. So yeah.
Bro, tell me something about auditing people don't consider enough. So meaning that people usually think it's easy and it's really easy to fuck up too.
Something about auditing that people think is easy,
Yeah, like
but it's actually
reentrances, reentrances can get super complex. People just say, hey, this is a reentry. Let's just use the pattern, right? But it can change into different ways. You have read reentrancy, which is a terrible name for the vector
yeah.
itself. So I feel sometimes the developers they don't put enough heart. We take too much for granted. We have too many open Zeppelin libraries. How does one make sure he's writing a good code?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think a good example of this would be the inflation attacks. Like I remember tweeting once about inflation attacks, and like one person replied saying that this is not going to lead to any unique or solo findings, but but like my solo medium finding is actually kind of like an inflation attack or a variation of it in my solo medium finding in ethos reserve. So my point being is that like you have these basic vulnerabilities like reentrancies and different types of reentrancies, inflation attacks. Like solo findings are usually a combination of these more basic bugs. So yeah, that's it.
Amazing, amazing, buddy. Now, can we talk a little bit about, when approaching learning and getting better at security? What are some tips you can give, like, reading reports, like what made the real difference for you? Was like practicing solidity, reading reports, going over past attacks.
Yeah, I try to. Well, if you're just starting out, I suggest to focus on just reading highs and mediums, right? And focus on reading audit reports of protocols that you already have a high level understanding of. Because if you don't understand the protocol that you're reading the report for, then you lack context to to get value out of that report. So better if you read audit reports of contests that you actually participated in. So and also try to be relentless with prioritizing your time. Don't try to study everything. Try to just focus on the things that would be relevant to your next audit. So if you're looking to join an audit contest for some, let's say, lending protocol, because there's a audit contest on Coderina or Sherlock, then study just everything that's related to lending protocols, and try not to. I mean, there's lots of like really interesting stuff that we get drawn to, and it's very distracting. Like sometimes like optimizations, right? Or like assembly. And of course, those are really important too. You need to study those, but you're gonna have to manage your time. And yeah, so focus on topics that are going to be relevant to your next audit, because that way also once you start your next audit, those things that you just learned would be more deeply embedded in your brain because you're immediately applying it. So,
Awesome, bro. Awesome, awesome answer. Can we talk a little bit about the difference between auditing by yourself, by auditing a top team? Like now you're working with trust. What you seeing that's difference? There's any new process, any alpha you can give us?
um, well, I think it's auditing as part of a team is I think better in most ways. Um, Although when I do audit contests, I prefer to do it solo. I don't know. I haven't really thought about doing it as part of a team, but yeah, as much as possible, I feel like if you're going to do private audits, and this is just my opinion though, um, private audits are more effective when done as part of the team, or at least as a two-man team or three-man team, and because like we've seen, right, Code Arena, we've seen Sherlock, we've seen that in the contest results, like usually even the top one doesn't really get all the bugs. They find like 70%, 80% at most, but they won't find everything. So yeah, if you want better coverage, you need at least two heads to do an audit. And it's great to audit as part of a team. Like you could, you know, exchange ideas, collaborate, and like yeah, it's just more efficient, I feel.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense. The other day we just had a case, I think with Deals Finance, where they had 9 audits, and each one of the audits came with a new bug. And this is simply, really hard to understand because those are $1 million audits. This company should be doing maybe, a more integrated job. But I guess auditing is hard for everyone. How do we make sure? So I've been talking with Open Zeppelin people, try to understand what they do different. And one thing that I
Mhm.
heard is that they always analyze the other protocol. So I'm auditing this token, but how it would behave on Aave if something happens, how it will behave on Compound if something happens. Did you ever did this kind of analysis where you have to look beyond only the code you're auditing?
Hmm. Yeah, well, actually, I had this recent discussion with Trust. This was on Twitter though, and he shared about how he had this one finding, a solo high finding in this one project. I forget the name of the project, but it's an audit contest on Code Arena, and yeah, he was top one there. He got like 27,000 from that. But the point was that even if because the code base for that project was just small, like I think 300 lines of code, but the finding that he had was related to an external protocol, Chainlink, related to VRF something. So yeah, it's important to like read external protocols too. Like for me, I worked my first audit reserve. I did not find any issues, but I read some of the audit reports, and most of them were related to. There were some juicy ones there that were related to external protocols, like because like Reserve has these things that are called collateral plugins, and it's basically to interact with protocols like Compound and whatever other protocol out there. And yeah.
Awesome. I saw a tweet some time ago that you did about taking breaks while learning and trying to organize your brain, give it a little bit of a cool down period. Can you talk a little bit about this? This is something that you always done, that you integrate today in your work period? Because sometimes doing audits, we get in the zone, but we get so zoomed out that we don't even understand the code anymore. So we really need to take a step back. How many times I thought of something like in the shower 2 hours after leaving the audit. There's any kind of brain process to optimize it.
Yeah, there's this thing. Well, I try to take breaks when my brain's tired. Like I could tell when I've spent enough time, like what I'm reading isn't making sense anymore, and it takes a while for me to parse code. Well, when that happens, I take a break. Like normally, and I've watched this talk by Andy Huberman, something about focus, and like we have like 19-minute cycles where we could that our brains could maintain focus, and beyond that, we don't need to take a break because yeah, we can't focus for any longer than that. 19 minutes to 2 hours. So so I try to apply that, and like taking breaks is good too because apparently one of the best ways for us to learn is to let our brain's background processes handle the learning, and they kick in when you take a break, when you're not doing anything, when you're resting, when you're napping. So when I study, at least I try to apply this when I as much as I can. Like I try not to just study like 4 hours straight. Like when I feel I'm tired, I take a break. I just rest, and yeah, that's it.
Makes a lot of sense. Changing a little bit the subject now. You recently had a kid, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Can you
Just
talk a
last.
little bit about the experience of being a dad? I mean, what is it like?
Being a dad, well, I think it's awesome. Well, at least for me, I don't know about other guys, but I really enjoy being a father. It's like it's very fulfilling in a different way. I mean, it's the type of fulfillment that you don't get from work, you don't get from auditing or anything else. So yeah,
That's so cool. It
it's
must be so
special.
motivating, right, for you because now you have this kid and now I have to work to give him the best life, and this must be like a great amount of motivation, I guess.
Oh yeah, it does help. She's very inspiring. And yeah, I work from home. I mean, it's great that sometimes, I could just check check on her and see if she's doing okay and all that. And just seeing her, it's like um yeah, it just feels good.
Jordan, when we look at a guy like you, we think that's only successes. We think that it's only good times. Can you talk a little bit about the frustrating times, the hard times while being an auditor?
Yeah, okay. Well, actually, lately I haven't been happy with my performance on Code Arena. My last two contests, not so great. Like there was one contest that was just um what was that? Contest 225 NFT lending platform. And like a lot of my findings were invalid. And it's due to inexperience, right? I submitted findings because I thought like, these were like owner misconfiguration. And I thought these would be valid because I saw old reports that were about misconfiguration and they were valid. But yeah, but it makes sense that they're not valid. But anyway, yeah. And what else? Yeah, other frustrating things. Yeah, well, generally it's not easy, right? I mean, especially when you're starting out, it's not like you start and then you win every contest that you join. Like I wish it were that easy. Like I don't know how I was able to pull it off. My first payout I got top two. The second one I got top five, and then like the next ones like I've done three contests after that and haven't really gotten any top five yet. So now I'm trying to work on my next. I want to get another top five win from in an audit contest. So yeah, that's my next goal.
Can you give me your view on the whole AI thing? Because now that all the auditors are going wild regarding, AI is taking their job, AI is taking their job. What is your view on that?
I haven't really spent that much time researching about it, but I've read some thoughts on AI, and most of them have been basically that AI is not really a threat, at least at this point, and no one knows for sure how long before they start becoming very, I guess, competent enough that they could replace like top auditors or regular auditors, even average. So I don't think there's any cause for concern, at least for now, because if AI becomes really good anyway that they can replace auditors, then I don't think it's anything to worry about because that means they could replace all jobs, right? They could replace probably doctors and and programmers and all those. So it's not just auditors that will lose their jobs, but everybody else. So yeah.
Amazing. I have a few questions from people here. I think Muhab wants to ask something. Muhab, go ahead.
Okay, good
Yeah, man.
afternoon.
How are you doing? I hope you're doing good.
I'm fine. I'm so happy to have this opportunity that I can ask you guys questions, as I've seen that you guys are one of the top in the industries. So I'd like to ask you two questions. Like, and the one question is about how you do your POC, like your proof of concept for the findings you get. And number two is, have you tried any bounty on Immunify, and how was it like?
Yes. So for number one, for how I do my POCs, I typically write tests on whatever framework that comes with a project. So if the project uses hard hat, I'll use hard hat. If it uses truffle, I use truffle. If it uses Foundry, I'll use Foundry. And I usually do that because I like to make use of whatever test setup they already have in place because I don't want to spend time figuring out how to set up the tests. So yeah, I find that saves me time. And for number two, I haven't yet tried getting into bug bounties, although that's something I have planned eventually. But yeah, so far I've been focused on just audit contests or
Okay,
private
that's
audits.
nice. I'd like to ask one more question. Like, I recently found out that you joined Trust Security. And I want to like know how it's like. Are you feeling like you are small compared to the people around here? Because the people there are beasts like Trust, Hokage, and the rest. Like, how do you feel when working with them? And have you been learning, or I don't know how to say it. Like, and you said you got your first payout. So like, how was it all about?
Yeah, well, my first private audit, I worked with J1, and I wasn't particularly worried because at least when I joined the team, I'm the lowest rank. So I guess the expectations for me are not as high compared to like someone like Trust or J1 or Zach LeBron because they're like higher ranking. So there's no pressure really. It's There's no pressure in terms of like in comparison to them, but there's pressure in the sense that I want to perform, I want to deliver, so I don't disappoint Trust. But yeah, but Trust is good. I mean, Trust is great, and even like I felt I didn't do particularly great in my first private audit with Trust, but Trust even just he gave me a performance bonus for. I'm not really sure why, but he did, and yeah, that was great.
He's really smart.
Next time.
Yeah, he sure is.
Muhab, you have a question?
Yeah, man. It's good to have you with us. Like, it's really good. So,
Awesome.
I have a question. If you would start auditing from zero, like, would you take the developer route, or are you going to start to jump right to auditing? What's your game plan? Let's say you're starting from the beginning.
Yeah, if I wanted to be an auditor, I'd start with auditing. I'd just go straight to auditing.
So you think developing is like wasting your time?
Well, if not exactly, there's still a lot of skills that are transferable to auditing. But if your goal is to be an auditor, it would be more efficient to just go straight into auditing rather than to, go through because like there are some skills that are just that are more that are specialized to auditing. So it's different. So yeah,
Yeah, because
got
I
the two.
thought like when you get into development, then you change your route to auditing. You will have some common things that you saw as an auditor. You have another perspective. Then you change it to auditing. So you have both perspective of the project and the auditor. That's like
Yeah,
the thing that is good for auditors.
yeah, actually, actually that's also helpful. But like if you're just about just an opinion, there's no right or wrong way. But I feel that if you want to be an auditor, then you focus on auditing, then I guess it would be faster. But yeah, it's valuable to have like a developer perspective too for auditing.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Oh, amazing. Chris,
Thank you
please.
too. Thank you.
Yeah. So my question is a little vague, but still. So, how much time do you take on average to audit like 100 lines of Solidity, and what is the process that you go through to actually like verify that a piece of code is actually working as intended? So, it may be a function, it may be a group of functions, but yeah, functionality as a whole. Like, what is the whole process that you go through?
Okay, so the question was like, how long does it take me to audit like 100 lines of code? Is that right?
Yes.
Um, Actually, I haven't really been strict with measuring my the time I spend on auditing, so I could not really tell for sure. But what I know is that in Code Arena, um, the way they set the number of days for audits is based on 330 lines of code per day. So, and in trust security, we also like I think follow that. So I think 330 lines of code per day is like a decent pace, enough to actually do a good audit. Um, and what was your other question again, Chris? I'm sorry, I'm the second
Yes.
one.
What is the whole methodology that you go through to audit a specific functionality and not the whole thing?
Okay, to audit a specific functionality. Hmm. Okay, so normally, like if I identify like a feature, right, like a user flow, like I don't know, like let's say rewards accrual. Um, I'm gonna have to go through all the functions that are related to that, and I start with the outermost function, right, the external function that starts the whole process. So yeah, I start from there, and what else? So I just try to follow the whole path, right, from the external function up to the end of the whole function, right? Like read everything like from no, it's kind of difficult to describe this whole thing without code, but um, I read it from top to bottom. That's it, including the internal libraries and the external libraries. But before I do that, I first do like multiple passes on the code, like that are just fast, because like if I don't have enough context and I read some functionality, it's going to be difficult for me to understand it right away. So I have to get some context by reading the code surrounding it, and having idea about the structure of the code, and basically all those things, so that next time when I go deep dive on that functionality, like it's easier to get it. Does that make sense, Chris?
Bro,
Yeah.
I'm sorry
Yes,
for interruption.
it does.
Do you mean that you test units, then you test the whole functionality, or like you go from testing one functionality to the other, then you test the whole code base, or what?
I'm
Going
sorry,
from
what
one
was that?
unit test to unit. Are you going from unit test to unit test? Do you test functionality by units? You divide them units, then you test them. Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, well, normally when I start out an audit, like I go through the whole code base initially, like a quick pass, to get to understand like the structure of the code base, to see, okay, which contracts have the most functions, which contracts interact with which contracts, which one looks to be the most complicated contract, which one interacts with the most contracts. Does that so just to have an idea, like more or less, okay, which contracts are the most um, juicy ones in terms of vulnerabilities, I guess, and which one has the most, you know, um, complexity, most functionalities, and just to have a like the initial passes is just to have like a vague idea. You're not supposed to get everything right away, but the initial passes are there so that you have a bit of understanding to help you dive deeper eventually. So, yeah.
Really cool. I think Nas has a question. Nas?
Hey, yeah. So I have
Why
one
not?
question. It's like, uh, what's your story behind your success? Like, how many reports you have submitted before you're getting your first valid report, and what was your first you reported? Like, you reported first gas information, or your first report was a high.
My first report was a high.
Okay.
I did
How
not.
long it took you?
My second audit contest in Code Arena, I got the. By the second audit contest, I was able to submit highs. It was. I felt that I needed to. I think what helped was that I focused on highs and mediums. I did not look into gas optimization. I did not even submit lows. I submitted lows in my later contests, but in my first contest, I just wanted to focus on highs and mediums. I think it helps, like especially if you're starting out, like if you try to look for gas optimizations while looking for mediums, while looking for highs, it's gonna be more difficult for you to find highs and mediums, in my opinion.
Amazing, amazing. And let's see, you have a question?
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, speaker, for sharing his experience. I want to ask a question. It's more like a case. Imagine a person has a little to no background, technical. He did some CTFs like not, and he's doing currently like Securium. What would you advise him, and what would, in your opinion, would be the most efficient way to start like climbing up the ranks? As you have said, for example, if I presume correctly, your method of thinking is just thinking about highs, but contrast to that, like Pashov or Andy Lee, they advise, for example, looking for like lower and gas optimizations. So what would you say is the most efficient way to like build up the momentum for a beginner?
Yeah. Well, for a beginner, I think there's so much that you need to learn, right? There's so much. There's so much you need to learn that it's overwhelming. And to help you handle all that new information, all that knowledge that you need to study, you're gonna need to do relentless prioritization, right? That means you need to cut out a lot of the things that may not be, in line with what your goals are. So first, you're gonna need to identify your goals, right? Do you want to be good at audits? Do you want to do well in Code Arena and Sherlock, or maybe even in Immunify? And you you study based on what you want to focus on, right? So if you want to focus on bug bounties, then I imagine there's going to be some differences compared to if you're focusing on Code Arena, on doing private audits or what. So yeah, and in my opinion, I feel like the studying gas optimization is different from studying vulnerabilities. So if you focus on on gas optimization while doing highs and mediums, that's you're gonna be adding more stuff to study. Unlike if you just focus on highs and mediums, you're just gonna focus on vulnerabilities. So so that's just my view of it. Like there's so much, so you need to specialize. You need to focus. Let's say you focus on C4, and then let's say since most of the contests are of DeFi protocols, might be better to focus on DeFi. And if you're really just starting out in DeFi and it's a bit overwhelming, then focus on something more specific like a lending protocol. Yeah. So you need to just cut it out until it's cut out stuff until it's not overwhelming. So yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I have a question.
Welcome.
I have a question.
Sure.
When it comes to DeFi and these bigger protocols, the maths there is so heavy. Like, I don't know if it was heavy for you, but and when you look at reports that has to do with solo findings, like the kind of maths they do there is just like mind blowing. So how did you like master it or like get a hang of the whole maths and the whole? I don't know how to put it, but
Good
I'm
question.
sure you understand what I'm talking about.
Sorry. About the maths, right? The question was
Yeah.
more about
Yeah.
okay. Okay. So yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people just starting out in DeFi, uh, especially auditors, like yeah, they're usually confused about the DeFi maths. So I think what I find helps is okay. First of all, I think all auditors need to study fixed point math, how it works, because that's how solidity, because there's no floating point in solidity, right? There's no like, so if you want to represent like $1.10 in solidity, $1.10 USDC in solidity, you're gonna have to do fixed point math to represent that value. So first of all, like get familiar with fixed point math because all DeFi protocols or all protocols in Solidity will use fixed point math, and from there, I think what I find helps also is to convert Solidity code into like regular math equations. Like normally when I'm auditing a code base, I if there's some code that's like a mathematical equation but expressed in Solidity, I find that converting it into a regular math equation. Like I put a comment on top of it that just shows like x times y equals z. I find it's easier for me to understand the code. And what else? Yeah, once you're familiar with fixed point math, try to focus like on smaller features in that are used all over in all of in most DeFi protocols. Like for example, rewards accruals, right? You want to understand how rewards accrue, or like interest accruals and how rewards are distributed. So you get yourself familiar with the math involving those features, and little by little, you're building up your knowledge, and then you become more confident. And when you're faced with new features that are unfamiliar to you, at least you already have a lot of familiarity that you have some confidence coming in when you start learning these newer features. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure, bro.
Yes, it makes sense.
Hey,
I
Hiders, you
think
have
I
a
have one
question?
more. I think I have one more question. Like, the level
What?
you are in, like where you look at the code base and you just like know what's going on. Like, do you like see high findings like instantly, or you just see someone you like know that okay, this is somewhere you have to look at? Like, what are the points where you just know that okay, something's wrong here? You just bookmark it, then later you come
Yes,
back to it. Like that
yes,
intuition,
exactly.
that's it.
Yes. So yeah, it's not instant at all. Like I just bookmark it. Like I see that, oh, here there's an attack vector. I identify like, so what I do is like I identify like levers in the code, like stuff that I could manipulate, and see what sort of effects those lead to, or what effects those have on the system or on the contract. And yeah, so that's basically it. And from there, like if I theorize on like different attacks basing on what what the contract or what the system, what the protocol allows me to do. And yeah, I try to combine those and come up. Usually, like when you unique findings, there are some unique findings that are like just in one function, and but that most people miss. But most of the time, it's really more complex. Like it involves multiple contracts and yeah, multiple functionalities. So yeah.
Awesome. Hiders, you have a question?
Thank you. So I have a small question. I was hearing you, and um, as like you are a developer
Okay, I
from.
don't think so. I have a question from Winged Hustler here. He said that I noticed you've been vocal on Twitter on not overblowing the earnings as an auditor, which a couple
Yeah.
of guys do very regularly. What is the monthly earnings, in your opinion, of someone has made? What was the monthly earnings, in your opinion, of someone who has made it in audit? I guess, yeah, I guess he's asking how much a successful auditor makes in months. So you don't have to answer this, only if you're comfortable saying that.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, if you're if you're a top auditor, like let's say Trust, I mean that one's probably big, right? But I don't know how much. But if you're, let's say, let's just say I used to earn more as a as a dev, and I got an offer for a job as a DeFi dev, and the offer was like within the 100 to 200K range per year, and that's bigger than than what most auditors make. Um, Really, the rewards of auditing come when you're like really top tier at the level of, maybe 1 year down the line at least of, being consistently good. So once you're at the level of, I don't know who's the best example. Of course, Trust is like is an extreme example because it's like probably top of the top. But yeah, so it's not like the fastest way to earn well. Like if you want, like in the crypto space, if you want a technical role and want to earn well quick as an auditor, it's better to get a job like at big firms, Open Zeppelin and all that. But doing the independent route, it will take a bit of time. But the potential of earning is much higher.
Amazing, bud. Amazing. Bro, this is it for the questions. I would like to know if you have any closing thoughts, any ideas, or any message you want to leave for people that will hear to this in the future.
Okay, let me think about this. So yeah, auditing I feel is like, for me personally, auditing is very fulfilling. I think it's really fun. Like there's nothing quite like the high of finding a critical, right? It's like in an audit contest or in a private audit. It's like it feels so, I don't know, like I never got like a dopamine rush like that, like when I was um developing software. So yeah, so that's one of the great things about auditing. And but it's not easy, it's difficult, and the rewards are really there for like the top 1% or top 0.5%. And it takes a while to get to that point. So I just want to make it clear that people shouldn't expect that it's going to be you join, you shift to auditing, you get into this space, and then you start earning so much real quick. You can focus in private audits. I don't think anyone can get private audits unless you've proven yourself in some way. Usually that's through Sherlock or maybe Immunify or maybe Code Arena. But it's gonna take some time, really, like everything. There's no like instant win unless you find a bug bounty, but then no one can just find bug bounties just like that. But yeah,
Amazing,
with
guys.
yeah,
Amazing.
hopefully it's not too negative. But I'm just trying to keep it real. But yeah,
It's what we need actually, because there's so many numbers around, right? And they're all really high numbers.
yeah, for sure. Like at least basing on Twitter, I mean, it seems like the market's been overhyped. So yeah.
What I think is that we don't have any developer jobs anymore because of the really harsh 500-day bear market we're facing. And then every developer just became an auditor because they are thinking like, okay, I need to become a better Solidity developer so I can actually get a job. But it turns out that if you're a really good Solidity developer, you can be an auditor. So I guess it's a little bit of that. But I'm pretty sure that this passing, we're about to see crazy high salaries for auditors. When the bull run peaks, at least that's what I think. And yeah, that's
Oh
pretty
yeah.
much it, man. I would like to thank you so much, Gjaldon, for joining us today, sharing all this alpha. It's really inspiring, especially for the kids, for me too. And yeah, bro, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity. And thanks to all of you guys here for listening in. And hope to catch you all on Twitter or, on Discord or wherever.
Thank you, bro. Bye bye, everyone. Follow Gjaldon, okay?
Thank you,
Bye,
sir.
all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, sir.
Thank you.
Bye, sir. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.